Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope everybody's doing great. Today's video is going to be about my first spring season as a grower, and yes, I lost my job, but we'll get into that later. Let's get started. Now, spring work usually starts around January, but I technically started on February because I was on holiday until January, plus I needed to self-isolate for 2 weeks. By the time I got back to work, I was overwhelmed. There were different kinds of plants I've never handled before, and it was a lot to take in at first. The needs of each plants were very different. A good example would be the petunias, which we planted the most, and they need a lot of water in their early stages so you can get the highest success rate for germination. Whereas Dusty Miller was a type of plant that thrived on lesser water from germination to taking care of it. So a lot of our plants had a different wet to dry cycle. A wet to dry cycle means a period when a plant gets fully saturated with water until it dries down. And the scale we follow is 1 bone dry to 5, which is fully saturated. Succulents, as we all know, do not need a lot of water, so they are the type of plants that can tolerate a bone dry 1. These numbers may not make sense to many, but all you need to do is just look at the plants, how they're doing, if the plants had wilting leaves, or if their stems were drooping, or even worse, if they were dead. A common method we use is simply to check the weight of the tray, which is either filled with water or not. Now, with all the things I had to keep in mind, maintaining these plants in their early stages were the hardest because that's when they're the most vulnerable. They can easily die if you leave them too dry or if you overwater them. And as they get bigger, they can tolerate with less water, and that's actually a very good thing for many reasons. One, with hundreds of seeds being planted on a single tray, as they get bigger, it can get really overcrowded, and you don't want to keep watering those trays because you'll basically promote a lot of bacterial and fungal diseases like botrytis or pythium. Not to mention, you'll attract a lot of pests who love moist environments like fungus gnats and shore flies, and occasionally aphids. And lastly, getting that root ball. Roots grow down to look for water. So imagine if you keep watering your plants, the roots wouldn't dig deep enough for water. It's what we call lazy roots. Aside from work, I also had 3 classes full-time. Balancing work, school, and things at home were not easy. I felt I always had to be in a strict schedule. There were times I had to catch up on both my work and studying. What do I mean by catching up? I manage a lot of zones, mainly 2 main zones alone most of the time, and it felt like I was managing this fast food restaurant where I had to be quick and know which batch of plants needed to be cared for first, then last. Pick your battles, they say. But if there was one thing I learned, it was to do what you can and get back to it later on the day. Let me tell you how. We have these overhead spray booms that's used to water all of these trays as evenly and efficiently as possible. I didn't use it a lot because not every individual plant gets watered, especially the corners and oftentimes at the center. There were spots that were more wet or drier than the others, so I thought I can't use the booms like this. So oftentimes I would water it by hand like you see here, and it takes a lot of time doing this, if you can imagine. But my boss simply said just use the boom even just once back and forth and go back to it later on the day. But there's a problem. I had school. Mostly work in the hours between 7 a.m. to 10 or 11 a.m. just in time for my afternoon classes. That means both of my main zones, 2 and 3, had to be watered within about 3 to 4 hours in the morning. So time wasn't my best friend. The afternoon, oftentimes my boss would come over and water some of the plants, and if not him, would be some other person who's not experienced in this type of field. Luckily, around mid-April, I finally had help from one of the company's contracted workers from Mexico. So with this help, I only had to manage one zone, and it made my job way easier just in time for my final exams. Then eventually another contract worker from Mexico arrived who has been with the company for a very long time, and in fact he was the original person who trained me. Now we had 3, including myself, people managing the entire greenhouse, watering them and taking care of the plants. Fast forward to May, if you saw my last video, a lot of the plants we had were being picked, packed and shipped accordingly to the stores for the season. And because of that, the greenhouse had lesser plants almost every single day. And then I get the talk. So one of my bosses told me that business is rapidly slowing down, and he was thinking of letting people go, from seasonal workers to some of our full-time employees. It was just a casual heads up for me, and I did not expect that I was one of them. So I was given my 1-week notice, and here I am, jobless. But I can finally relax. Since the beginning of the year, I never had a real break. The only places I ever went out to were at work, the groceries, and often school. I can try to enjoy the outdoors now while also having my summer beekeeping class, which, I'll be honest, is the best experience anyone can have. I can also try to make some videos about it if you guys were interested. And I got vaccinated. So until then, finishing school is my #1 priority, and after graduating, I can finally go back to my fellow plants again. Alright guys, that's a wrap. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. Until next time, thank you and have yourself a wonderful day, guys. Bye!